Have you ever noticed that the kinder you are, the more invisible you become? You hold the door open, no thank you. You offer your help, and suddenly it's expected. You give without asking, listen without interrupting, stay present when others vanish, and somewhere in the silence, your kindness is mistaken for insignificance. It's one of the quiet tragedies of our time. The more you pour into others, the more the world drinks, without ever pausing to ask if your cup is empty. You show up. You give your best. You sacrifice your time, your energy, your peace, your heart. And instead of being cherished, you're taken for granted. Instead of being respected, you're dismissed. And at some point, your needs, your voice, your presence start to disappear in the very spaces you worked so hard to hold together. You begin to wonder, is there something wrong with me? Is kindness the flaw? No, the flaw isn't in your kindness. The flaw is in the world's response to it. Because in a culture addicted to speed, dominance, and self-interest, kindness gets confused with weakness. Quiet strength gets overlooked. Soft hearts are seen as soft minds, and those who give freely often become the most easily forgotten. But here's the truth. It's not your kindness that needs to change. It's how you embody it, because kindness without wisdom becomes martyrdom. It becomes a candle, burning out in a room that never cared for its light. And that's where Stoicism steps in, not to harden you, not to make you cold, but to guide your warmth with structure, to shape your giving with boundaries, and to remind you that true virtue does not require you to be voiceless. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. They weren't against kindness. They were masters of it. But they practiced it differently. They gave from a full cup. They spoke softly but carried a spine of steel. They served others without losing themselves. Because here's the paradox no one talks about. If you offer everything and demand nothing, you teach others to take everything and value nothing. But this doesn't have to be your story. You don't have to choose between being kind and being respected. The two were never meant to be separate. So in this video, we'll uncover the 10 hidden reasons why your kindness may be costing you your power. Not to shame you, not to turn your heart bitter, but to awaken you, to remind you that your softness is not weakness, it's unrefined strength. And when channeled through clarity and principle, your kindness becomes magnetic, unshakable, respected. By the end of this journey, you won't just understand why kindness can backfire. You'll know how to reclaim it as your greatest strength. Because real kindness doesn't mean shrinking. It means standing tall. It means choosing with intention and walking away with grace when your soul whispers enough. So if you've ever felt unseen, if you've ever been the one who stayed too long, gave too much, or was kind when no one noticed, this is your moment. You're not alone. You never were. There are thousands just like you, kind souls with strong hearts who forgot that boundaries don't make you cruel, they make you whole. So stay with me. We're about to explore the Stoic path to powerful kindness and how to live with compassion without being a doormat. And if this message is already stirring something in your chest, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs it. Because it's time we stop seeing kindness as weakness and start remembering it as quiet strength with a backbone. Number 1, people don't appreciate what's always available. Have you ever noticed how easily people forget the hand that's always extended? How quickly they stop saying thank you when they know you'll always say yes? At first, your kindness is a light in their darkness. It warms them, lifts them, gives them hope. But slowly, without them even realizing, they stop seeing it. not because your kindness has faded, but because it has become constant, familiar, always there. And in a world addicted to novelty, constancy is often mistaken for insignificance. This is one of the quietest tragedies of kindness. Like air, your compassion becomes invisible. Like water, your presence becomes expected. And in this expectation, the value you once offered begins to vanish from their eyes. You're no longer the friend who shows up. You're the one who's supposed to. You're no longer the helper. They begin to think you owe it to them. The human heart, if left unchecked, tends to drift toward ingratitude. Stoicism saw this clearly. Epictetus warned us that we don't cherish what's easily available. We romanticize what's out of reach. We respect what requires effort. We chase what isn't freely given. And so, the more freely you offer yourself, without boundary, without pause, the more you risk becoming unseen, misunderstood, taken for granted. You begin to feel invisible not because you've changed, but because your generosity has created a rhythm so predictable that it disappears into the background of their lives. You sacrifice sleep to be there for others. You carry burdens that don't belong to you, and slowly no one remembers that it was a choice. They see it as a role, a function, a utility. And when you finally say no, when you finally ask for something in return, they're shocked, as if you've broken some unspoken agreement to always be the giver. But here's what the Stoics would remind you. It is not kindness that makes you weak. It is the absence of wisdom guiding your kindness. Marcus Aurelius didn't reject compassion. He refined it. He understood that true virtue is not in endless giving, but in measured giving. You must not pour endlessly from a cup that's never refilled. You must not confuse self-sacrifice with self-erasure. Stoicism teaches us to act with intention, not impulse. To give, not to please, but to uplift. To serve, not out of fear of rejection, but from a place of strength and discernment. When your kindness becomes scarce, not because you've closed your heart, but because you've raised your standards, it becomes sacred again. People notice, people pause, and more importantly, they begin to respect. Think of the sun. It rises and sets every day, but when it disappears behind clouds, we remember its warmth. When it finally returns, we feel its value again. Your kindness must be like that, always present in your soul, but not always on display. Available but not automatic, generous but not unguarded. Because when people must meet you with gratitude to receive your light, they begin to treat it as a gift, not a given. So if you've been wondering why your constant kindness is being met with silence, perhaps it's time to withdraw. Not your goodness, but your availability. Not your compassion, but your overextension. Epictetus would say, don't devalue what is noble by making it cheap. Let your kindness be earned. Let your presence be chosen. And in doing so, let your soul breathe again. This is not coldness. This is clarity. This is not withholding. It is wisdom, because what is rare becomes precious, and what is given with boundaries becomes honored. Number 2, lack of boundaries is lack of dignity. There is a quiet erosion that happens when we give too much without a line, a pause, a principle. At first it seems noble, this willingness to always say yes, to always be available, to soften every edge so others never feel discomfort in our presence. But over time, this constant bending begins to break something within us. And what fractures isn't just our energy, our patience, or our time, it's our dignity. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, understood this deeply. He lived in a world of demands, expectations, and duties. Yet in his writings, he returned again and again to one anchor: self-respect, not arrogance, not pride, but a calm, unwavering recognition of one's own worth. He wrote not to impress others, but to remind himself and us that virtue begins at the core. And at the core of every soul worthy of peace is the strength to say no. The modern world often confuses kindness with compliance. We're praised for being easygoing, for never causing waves, for absorbing the discomfort so others don't have to. But in truth, this kind of unconditional surrender is not virtue, it is neglect. When we fail to set boundaries, we are not practicing compassion. We are betraying ourselves. When we let people cross lines we've never drawn, how can we expect them to respect limits we've never spoken? Without boundaries, your kindness becomes shapeless. And what is shapeless cannot stand. It flows into every space, every demand, every expectation, until there's nothing left for you. The Stoics knew this danger well. To them, virtue was not passive. It was not about pleasing everyone or avoiding conflict. It was about living in accordance with reason and nature. And nature, by its design, has limits. A tree grows tall because its roots know when to stop. A river carves valleys because its banks hold firm. Likewise, your soul needs borders, not to shut others out, but to hold yourself in, to protect the sacred space where your intentions live, to honor the part of you that longs to serve, but refuses to be used. When you say yes to everything, you diminish the value of your yes. And when you never say no, your silence becomes permission for others to treat you as less than whole. But dignity, true dignity, is quiet strength. It's the kind of presence that doesn't need to raise its voice to be heard. It doesn't demand attention. It commands respect by living with clarity and conviction. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is self-knowledge in action. It is your soul saying, I know my limits and I honor them. It is compassion with a backbone, generosity with discernment, love not as a duty, but as a conscious choice. And when you live like that, something shifts, not just in how others treat you, but in how you begin to see yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop sacrificing your peace for temporary approval. And in that space where your no begins to bloom, your true kindness finally has room to grow, not as a desperate offering, but as a deliberate gift. Remember, the Stoics didn't teach us to be agreeable. They taught us to be grounded. And a grounded soul does not let others build homes on its back. A grounded soul invites others into mutual respect, or it walks away in silence. This is not cruelty. This is virtue. Because love without self-respect is not love. It is fear in disguise. So if you've been living without boundaries, understand this. You're not weak for being kind. You're only at risk when your kindness lacks wisdom. Anchor your actions in virtue. Let your yes mean something. Let your no be holy. And above all, carry your dignity like armor, soft in spirit, but firm in foundation. For as Marcus Aurelius reminded us, self-respect is not a luxury. It is the starting point of a meaningful life. Number 3, the unstable heart behind unquestioned kindness. There's a certain kind of kindness that appears radiant on the outside but trembles beneath the surface. It's the kindness of the person who says yes before thinking, who gives before they're asked, who apologizes when they've done nothing wrong. They seem generous, gentle, even admirable. But if you look closer, you'll see the quiet truth behind it. Fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of confrontation. Fear of not being enough unless they're constantly giving something away. Seneca, the Stoic dramatist and philosopher, saw through this illusion long ago. To him, true freedom was not the ability to please others. It was the ability to govern yourself. A man who does not control himself, he warned, will always be a slave to the emotions and needs of others. And that's exactly what happens to those whose kindness is reactive rather than reasoned. Their hearts become open doors with no locks, and every demand, every expectation rushes in unchecked. We often think of kindness as a virtue, and it is. But virtue in Stoicism is never blind. It is never reflexive. It is never given to earn affection or avoid conflict. When kindness becomes a habit born of insecurity, it stops being noble. It becomes a survival strategy, a way to be needed, not respected, a method to feel safe rather than powerful. Many kind people grew up equating peace with silence. They learned to keep the waters calm even when storms brewed inside. And so, instead of learning to hold their ground, they learned to retreat behind a smile. But Stoicism does not ask you to hide. It asks you to rise. It asks you to become a person who can look discomfort in the eye and not flinch. A person who chooses kindness not because they fear anger, but because they've mastered their own. True, Stoic kindness is fierce in its clarity. It is gentle, yes, but it is never soft in the way that invites erosion. It does not yield to manipulation. It does not confuse being liked with being whole. It does not say yes when the heart means no. That kind of discipline can only come from within. It requires daily confrontation with your own motives, your fears, your desire to be seen a certain way. It demands inner honesty, the kind that says, I will give because it is right, not because I'm afraid to withhold. If you find yourself constantly drained by your giving, constantly anxious in your helping, constantly hoping for appreciation, that never comes, pause. Not to blame yourself, but to begin again. Ask yourself, am I being kind or am I trying to be accepted? Am I serving out of love or out of fear? Am I choosing this act or have I been conditioned to feel I have no choice? The Stoics taught us that the highest good is arete, virtue born from rational choice. They believed in a life governed not by impulse, but by principle. So when you give, let it be because you are full, not because you feel empty. When you speak kindly, let it be from strength, not submission. And when you offer your time, your care, your presence, do it not to be needed, but because you are already whole. To master yourself is the greatest rebellion in a world that profits from your uncertainty. It is how you move from being reactive to intentional, from being used to being respected. Your kindness, when rooted in clarity, becomes unshakable. It ceases to be a mask and becomes a mirror, reflecting a soul that is at peace with itself. So don't stop being kind, but do let that kindness pass through the fire of discernment. Let it be tempered, not tamed. Let it be soft in tone, but firm in boundary. Because when your heart is steady, your kindness becomes a sword, not of aggression, but of unwavering presence. And in that quiet strength, you will no longer be the slave of others' emotions. You will be the master of your own. Number 4, The trap of expectation. When kindness becomes obligation, there is a silent burden that weighs heavily on the kind-hearted. It is the expectation that they will always show up, always help, always say yes. At first, their kindness is admired, even cherished. But over time, something begins to shift. What was once a gift becomes a duty. What once drew gratitude now draws assumption. And the very acts that once warmed hearts begin to go unnoticed until they're withheld. This is the trap of being consistently kind in a world that often values convenience over character. When you are generous too often without boundaries, people stop seeing your acts as noble and start treating them as obligations. They begin to see your kindness not as an offering, but as a service. And the moment you pause, hesitate, or decline, they feel offended, even betrayed, as if you owed them something, as if your goodness is their right. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, understood this distortion of virtue. In his meditations, he wrote with clear conviction, "Give when it feels right, not when others demand it." That line holds the key to freeing yourself from the invisible chains of expectation. Because the heart of Stoic kindness is not rooted in people-pleasing, it's rooted in wisdom. It's not about being endlessly available. It's about being intentionally generous. Stoicism teaches us to examine the why behind the what. Why do you say yes so easily? Why do you show up even when you're exhausted? Why does the thought of disappointing someone stir so much guilt in your chest? If you give simply to maintain peace, to avoid rejection, or to uphold an image of who people believe you are, you're not giving from strength. You're giving from pressure, and that is not Stoic. The Stoics believed in eudaimonia, a flourishing life built on virtue, self-respect, and inner clarity. In that life, kindness is not an automatic reflex. It is a conscious act, guided by principle, not pushed by demand. And it is only when you detach from the need to be seen as always good that your goodness begins to reclaim its dignity. Because here's the truth. Even the noblest river must have banks. Without boundaries, your giving becomes a flood, uncontrolled, overwhelming, and eventually destructive to yourself. You must have the courage to say no when your soul needs rest, when your mind seeks stillness, when your energy has been drained. You must remember that your worth does not lie in being constantly agreeable. It lies in being consistently authentic. When you give from a place of truth, your kindness has depth. It's no longer about image, obligation, or reputation. It becomes a sacred extension of who you are. Not a performance, but a principle. Not something others can demand, but something you choose. So if you feel exhausted by your own goodness, if your kindness has become your cage, pause. Ask yourself, am I being kind or am I being used? Am I giving from fullness or from fear? And most importantly, am I allowed to be good only when it's real, or must I be good even when it's forced? The Stoic path invites you to reclaim your agency, to give when your heart calls for it, not when the crowd demands it, to be a well, not a faucet, a source, not a servant, because the true measure of kindness is not how much you give, but how wisely you do so. And in that wisdom, you'll find something rare, the power to be good without being taken for granted, to be generous without being drained, and to walk through this world with a heart open, not because it has to be, but because it chooses to be. That is Stoicism. That is strength. That is freedom. Number 5. When kindness becomes self-destruction. A Stoic warning against noble burnout. There's a haunting beauty in selflessness. When someone gives without expectation, offers their energy without needing applause, and shows up for others even when it costs them something. It's the kind of soul the world praises in poetry and prayers. But what happens when that soul, so radiant in its generosity, begins to dim? What happens when the giver gives so much that there's nothing left to give, not even to themselves? This is the quiet tragedy of excessive kindness. And Stoicism, though rooted in restraint and reason, holds deep compassion for those who fall into this invisible form of self-destruction. Epictetus, the once enslaved Stoic philosopher who became a teacher of emperors, offered a timeless warning. Don't lose yourself trying to save someone from a fire they lit themselves. In those few words lies a profound truth, one that every overly kind soul needs to hear. You are not the solution to everyone's suffering, and trying to be might destroy you. In today's world, kindness is often romanticized as being endlessly available, endlessly giving, endlessly self-sacrificing. You're told that to be a good person is to put others first, always. But Stoicism draws a firm boundary around this illusion. Being good doesn't mean being used. Being noble doesn't mean being naive. And most importantly, being kind does not mean being careless with your own soul. You see, a well can only nourish others if it's full. A fire can only warm others if it isn't burning you alive. The mistake we make, especially those with soft hearts and strong shoulders, is thinking that we can save everyone. We think if we just love harder, give more, tolerate longer, they'll change. They'll heal. They'll finally see and appreciate our goodness. But that's not how people work. That's not how growth works. And that's not how respect is earned. Stoicism teaches us the discipline of compassion. Yes, be kind. Yes, be helpful, but never at the cost of your own well-being. Because when your giving becomes compulsive, when your yes becomes automatic, when your energy is no longer protected, you are no longer being kind. You are abandoning yourself. You are pouring from a cup that's already cracked, hoping no one sees the leaks. And what happens in time? You begin to feel resentment, exhaustion, emptiness. You wake up one day and realize that you've built a life around everyone else's needs but your own. That your light, once so warm and bright, has become a flicker, and no one notices because they've grown used to your light. They expect it, they assume it, and worst of all, they never stop to ask how you're doing. This is where Stoicism calls us to rise, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with strength, to pause, to reflect, and to redirect our kindness through wisdom, to give not from guilt, but from groundedness, to help not from obligation, but from clarity, and to love others without abandoning the responsibility to also love ourselves. You do not owe the world your exhaustion. You do not prove your worth through suffering, and you are not selfish for stepping back, for saying no, for choosing your own peace. Kindness, to be sustainable, must come from fullness, not from fear of being disliked, not from the need to be needed, but from a place so rooted, so stable, that your giving becomes an overflow, not a cry for approval. So the next time you find yourself on the edge of burnout, ask, am I helping, or am I hurting myself trying to help? Am I stepping into the fire out of courage or out of compulsion? And most importantly, have I mistaken self-sacrifice for virtue? The Stoic answer is simple, but not easy. Choose the kind of kindness that sustains, not the kind that erases. Give from your abundance, not your depletion. Protect your light so it can keep shining, not just for others but for you too. That's not selfish, that's sacred, and it's the kind of strength the world needs more of. Number 6, kindness without wisdom becomes a tool for manipulation. There is a kind of kindness that soothes, it uplifts, heals, and nurtures the soul. But there is also a kindness that suffocates, that enables destruction, that allows manipulation to flourish under the disguise of virtue. And the difference between the two is not in the heart, but in the mind. Stoicism, often misunderstood as emotionless or rigid, does not reject kindness. In fact, it reveres it, but it demands that kindness be guided by wisdom, not sentiment, not fear, not compulsion, but clarity. Imagine a doctor whose only goal is to please the patient. When someone in pain comes to him asking for relief, he hands over whatever makes them feel better in the moment, regardless of consequences. He ignores the deeper diagnosis, the root problem, because he doesn't want the patient to feel discomfort. In doing so, he may ease a symptom, but he also allows the disease to grow. That is what unthinking kindness does. It soothes in the short term, but it destroys in the long run. And this is the great danger of being too soft-hearted without also being strong-minded. When you let your kindness be directed by guilt, by fear of conflict, or by the hunger to be liked, you stop offering real help. You become unintentionally a participant in someone else's self-sabotage. You say yes when the truth demands a no. You offer comfort when what is needed is confrontation. You silence your instincts to keep the peace, even if that silence costs you your voice. Stoic kindness is different. It is not people-pleasing. It is not rooted in insecurity. It is not blind. It is surgical, like a healer who knows that truth is the first medicine, even when it stings. The Stoics taught that virtue is the highest good, and kindness without virtue, without judgment, without self-respect, without boundaries, is merely sentimentality. And sentimentality, when unchecked, leads to moral confusion. It lets toxicity fester in relationships. It rewards entitlement. It erodes respect. Epictetus once reminded his students that we are not responsible for how others feel. We are responsible for how we act. If your kindness causes others to grow dependent, manipulative, or disrespectful, then your kindness is not kind at all. It is enabling. And no matter how noble your intention, an enabling heart will always be broken in the end by the very people it tries to help. To live with Stoic integrity is to ask hard questions before you give. Is my action guided by virtue or by avoidance? Am I helping someone grow or simply preventing them from feeling pain? Am I giving from wisdom or from weakness? Because the truth is, not everyone deserves your kindness. Not because they are evil, but because they will twist your goodness into something it was never meant to be. And if you don't bring discernment to your compassion, you will end up resenting the very people you once tried to love. So the Stoic does not stop being kind, but they refine it. They pause before saying yes. They evaluate before rushing in. They speak the truth, even when it's not welcome, because they know that true love, true care, is sometimes firm, sometimes silent, sometimes brave enough to walk away. Let your kindness be like sunlight, warm but not blinding, generous but not without direction. You are not here to be a savior to all. You are here to be whole, and your wholeness, your thoughtful kindness, is what gives others the permission to rise, not to lean. So be kind, but let that kindness be laced with fire, with strength, with discernment. because only then can it stand the test of time and truly make a difference. Number 7, kindness doesn't create respect, only virtue does. In a world obsessed with approval, we are often taught, subtly, repeatedly, that if you want people to like you, be kind, smile more, give more, be soft, agreeable, always available. But what they don't teach you is this: kindness without virtue, without boundaries, without inner strength, does not earn you respect. It earns you comfort roles in other people's lives. And comfort roles are forgettable, disposable, replaceable. What stays, what commands reverence, is not how much you gave, but how fiercely you stood for what was right, especially when it was hard. The Stoics never praised kindness as an end in itself. Marcus Aurelius didn't seek kindness to be liked by the Roman Senate. Seneca didn't preach compassion to win friends. Epictetus, once a slave, did not speak of mercy as a way to soften hearts. No, they anchored kindness within virtue. They taught that you must first be rooted in principle before you extend your hand to others, because without that root, kindness is just wind. It moves, it sways, but it holds nothing firm. To live by virtue means to live with unwavering clarity. It means your yes comes from conviction and your no from wisdom. It means you don't bend simply because someone is disappointed. You don't soften your stance because someone might disapprove. You live according to your inner compass, not the shifting opinions of the crowd. And that is what people respect, even if they don't always like it. Even if they don't thank you for it, even if they resist it at first. People may enjoy your kindness, but they respect your self-control. They may welcome your generosity, but they respect your refusal to compromise your integrity. It is not the act of giving that commands admiration. It is the discernment behind the gift, the strength behind the smile, the steel behind the silence. The Stoic understands that true power does not lie in being endlessly good. It lies in being good with judgment. It lies in being kind without being controlled. When you try to use kindness to gain affection, you place your dignity on the bargaining table. You allow others to determine your worth by how much you can offer them. But when you act from virtue, when your kindness is simply a reflection of your character, not a currency for attention, you become untouchable. You become grounded, and the world feels that. People sense when you are not swayed by praise, when you are not broken by rejection, when your kindness is not performative but principled. There is a silent authority in those who do good quietly, steadily, without the need to be noticed. There is a quiet power in those who set boundaries with grace, who say no without cruelty and yes without fear. That is the Stoic path, and that is what commands lasting respect. So let your kindness be real, but never desperate. Let it flow, but never flood. Give, but only from fullness. Be generous, but anchored. Because in the end, it is not your kindness that makes people stand in awe. It is your unshakable virtue, your consistency, your courage, your calm fire. That is what leaves an impression. That is what lasts. To be both kind and strong. This is rare. To be both compassionate and immovable. This is mastery. And in a world that confuses loudness for power and softness for weakness, the Stoic stands as a paradox, gentle enough to care, but firm enough to be respected. That is the kind of person no one dares to take for granted. Number 8, kindness isn't about making people happy. It's about doing what's right. We've been misled to believe that kindness is about making people feel good, about pleasing, pacifying and smoothing every rough edge in human interaction. But that's not kindness, that's people-pleasing wrapped in fear. True kindness in the Stoic tradition isn't about how your actions are received. It's about whether those actions are rooted in reason, self-discipline, and moral clarity. You're not here to make everyone comfortable. You are here to live by truth. Seneca's wisdom cuts through modern noise like a blade through fog. He reminds us that a kind act is not defined by how much it soothes another's emotions, but by how well it aligns with virtue. And this is where most people get it wrong. They believe that to be kind, they must never disappoint anyone. They must agree. They must soften their words. They must silence their own needs so that others don't feel slighted. But that is not Stoic kindness. That is submission. That is the fear of rejection dressed up as virtue. Stoic kindness is not fragile. It does not need to be liked. It does not flinch when others disapprove. It stands firm like a mountain, not because it is cold, but because it is sure. It knows that doing what is right sometimes makes people uncomfortable. Sometimes it makes them angry. Sometimes it costs you approval. And still, you do it. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. That is the fire of true character. There will be moments in life when your kindness is questioned, twisted, or rejected. When others will call you cold simply because you chose truth over flattery, discipline over indulgence, or boundaries over endless availability. In those moments, do not shrink. Do not rush to explain yourself or apologize for holding the line. Because kindness, when practiced rightly, does not need to be explained. It reveals itself in time. The same people who resist your honesty today will one day respect you for it, if not outwardly, then inwardly, quietly, in ways they may never admit. To be kind without betraying your values. This is Stoic courage. To say no when everyone expects a yes. To speak gently, but not dishonestly. To give, but never in a way that enables harm. This is not weakness, this is leadership. You don't owe the world your agreement, you owe it your integrity. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to disappoint them, because you refuse to lie, because you refuse to enable their self-deception, because you care more about their growth than their approval. There is a quiet strength in the person who no longer chases applause. There is a sacred calm in those who live by inner standards rather than outer praise. They walk through the world like a steady flame, gentle, yes, but never wavering. They do not need everyone to understand them because they understand themselves. And when they offer kindness, it is not to gain favor. It is to uphold virtue. So don't aim to be kind in the eyes of others. Aim to be kind in the eyes of your higher self. Let your kindness be forged by reason, not reaction. Let it carry the weight of discipline, not the fragility of people-pleasing. Because the truth is, you will never please everyone. But you can respect yourself. And in the end, that is the only approval that matters. Let the world see a new kind of kindness, one that does not bend, one that does not beg, one that does not vanish when tested. A kindness born from wisdom, clothed in strength and rooted in what is right. Number 9, you are not here to save everyone. There's a quiet exhaustion that settles deep in the hearts of those who try to be everything for everyone. The chronic fixers, the emotional healers, the uninvited rescuers of a world that never asked them to carry its weight. You may feel noble, even righteous, trying to hold everyone together, but eventually you begin to crumble from within. Because no matter how much light you pour out, It will never be enough for someone determined to live in darkness. And the truth, as harsh and liberating as it is, must be accepted. You are not here to save everyone. Stoicism doesn't teach indifference. It teaches intelligent care. It doesn't say, don't help. It says, help when it's right. Help when it's within your reason. Help when it doesn't cost you your soul. You cannot be a savior to people who are committed to their own destruction. You cannot carry people who are unwilling to walk. Epictetus reminds us with piercing clarity. Our peace lies in focusing only on what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, our responses. Everything else, how others receive us, whether they change, whether they see our value, is not up to us. And spending our lives trying to manage what isn't ours to hold is not compassion. It's self-neglect. You've probably felt it before, the weight of wanting to be appreciated, of trying to be the one who makes things better, of believing that if you just gave a little more, maybe they would finally see your worth. But that desire, though human, is a trap. Because there are some who will never recognize your kindness, not because you're not worthy, but because they are not ready. And others will misuse it, not because you're naive, but because you haven't yet realized you don't owe them your energy. Stoicism invites you into a different kind of strength, the strength of surrendering control over what isn't yours, the strength of walking away, not with bitterness, but with grace, the strength of giving without expecting, helping without attaching, and stepping back without guilt. You are not the sun meant to warm every cold soul. You are not the glue meant to bind every broken bond. And you are not obligated to empty yourself to prove your goodness. This is not cruelty. This is wisdom, because the highest form of love, Stoic love, is not saving others at the expense of yourself. It's living so aligned with virtue that your example becomes the lesson. And if someone chooses to learn, they will. If they don't, you are not less for walking away. You are more. You are whole. There's a quiet freedom that comes when you finally understand. Your worth does not increase with other people's problems. Your value isn't tied to your ability to fix or please or carry. You are enough simply by being whole, grounded, and true to your principles. When you give, let it be from fullness. When you help, let it be with boundaries. And when you walk away, let it be with peace. So let the world be what it is. Let people make their own choices. Stop trying to heal those who don't want to change. Your job is not to save everyone. Your job is to live with courage, clarity, and compassion for yourself first. That is what Stoicism teaches, not to harden but to discern, not to abandon, but to release, and not to rescue, but to rise. Let that be the lesson you carry. Number 10, sustainable kindness must be a conscious choice. True kindness is never the result of fear. It's not something we offer to avoid conflict, to gain favor, or to protect ourselves from being disliked. Stoicism reminds us, if your kindness is not a conscious act of strength, it becomes a silent chain of obligation. You begin to live, not as a free human being, but as a servant to the expectations of others. And that is not virtue, that is surrender. In a world where social cues whisper, "Be nice at all costs," it's easy to confuse kindness with compliance. Easy to say yes because saying no feels cold. Easy to give because withholding feels cruel. But Epictetus would ask, did you choose that act of giving, or did fear choose it for you? Were you acting from strength or reacting from guilt? Kindness that springs from pressure is not kindness, it's appeasement. And while it may keep the peace in the short term, it erodes your self-respect in the long run. The Stoics teach that the most powerful acts of kindness are born from sovereignty, the inner command of a mind ruled not by emotion or demand, but by reason and virtue. When you give from this place, you're not trying to be liked, you're not avoiding discomfort, you're living in harmony with your values. That kind of kindness has gravity. It doesn't beg to be seen. It commands respect without asking for it. Let's be clear. You owe no one your time, your energy, your heart, unless you freely choose to give it. Not out of habit, not out of guilt, not because you fear disappointing someone. You owe it only when your soul aligns with the act, when your integrity and peace are preserved, not sacrificed. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Extend that to kindness. If it is not freely chosen, do not give it. Because anything forced ceases to be noble. It becomes a transaction, a silent burden disguised as virtue. So what does conscious kindness look like? It's saying yes because you mean it, not because you're afraid to say no. It's helping someone not because they guilted you into it, but because you saw value in the act. It's listening deeply, not to be seen as good, but because compassion arises naturally from your clarity. And just as importantly, it's walking away when your giving becomes expected, entitled, or exploited without shame. This is where real power lies, in the ability to give without being used, to love without losing yourself, to care without collapsing under the weight of obligation. Stoic kindness is not people-pleasing. It is not martyrdom. It is not a performance. It is the act of a grounded spirit offering what it can, when it can, with eyes wide open and spine straight. That is what makes it sustainable. That is what makes it sacred. And when you live this way, you begin to notice something. People respect what is chosen, not what is coerced. They feel the difference between kindness that is performative and kindness that is purposeful. They may not always applaud it, but they feel it, because nothing touches the soul more deeply than someone who gives from strength, not fear. So the next time you feel the pull to be kind, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this from love or from fear? From alignment or anxiety, from wisdom or from weakness? And if the answer isn't clear, step back, reclaim your stillness. Let your action come not from impulse, but from intention. That is Stoicism in motion. That is kindness that lasts. Final reflection. There's a quiet tragedy in the way kindness is often misunderstood. In a world driven by appearances and advantage, we're taught, subtly or directly, that if you're too soft, you'll be stepped on. That if you give too much, you'll be forgotten. But Stoicism offers a wiser, more powerful truth. Kindness is not weakness, but kindness without wisdom, without boundaries, without intention, becomes submission. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, a man should be upright, not kept upright. Kindness must come from inner strength, not from the fear of being disliked. When we are kind for approval, we trade self-respect for external validation. But when we are kind from a place of principle, with no need to be praised, we embody true virtue. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Often we fear setting boundaries because we imagine rejection, judgment, or conflict. But the truth is, When you draw clear, respectful lines, people don't push you away. They begin to respect you because they finally understand where you stand. The Stoic path to respected kindness. Give with discernment, not obligation. Before offering help, ask yourself, is this an act of virtue or a reflex of fear? The Stoic does not give to be liked. He gives because it is right. Your kindness must align with wisdom and justice, not with emotional pressure. Set firm boundaries with calm resolve. Boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They are bridges that protect it from erosion. Saying no when your resources are drained isn't selfish, it's responsible. It teaches the world how to treat you. Detach from the need to be seen as nice. Epictetus warned us not to seek the approval of others. A Stoic does what is right, not what earns applause. Let your kindness be silent but strong. Let your no be calm but final. Let your peace be non-negotiable. Hold others accountable with compassion. True kindness doesn't enable weakness. It uplifts, guides, and when necessary, confronts with honesty. Praise those who appreciate you. Step back from those who demand more than they respect. Anchor yourself in inner virtue. When your worth is rooted in virtue, you no longer fear losing others. The Stoic is not cold, he is composed. He does not lash out, but he does not kneel to manipulation either. And through this unwavering alignment with his values, his kindness becomes a source of authority. True power comes from wise kindness. Real power isn't found in the loudest voice or the hardest fist. It's born in the quiet grace of someone who knows their limits, honors their values, and gives from a place of strength. When you set boundaries, practice kindness wisely, and respond with reason, you don't just protect yourself, you create lasting impact. Kindness doesn't need to be eliminated, it only needs to be guided by reason and inner strength. So be kind, but be clear. Be generous, but be discerning. Let your warmth shine, but let it be shaped by wisdom, not fear. And if this message spoke to your soul, don't let it end here. Like this video to show your support. Subscribe to the channel for more Stoic wisdom and reflection. Share this with someone who gives too much and forgets their own worth. Here, we don't just talk about Stoicism, we live it. Stay kind, stay sovereign, stay unshakable.